Saint Alia of the Knife is a character of tragic but enthralling duality. She is a corruption of ancestral egos, the intended Atreides daughter who came out wrong, the sister who is feared to the brother who is revered. She is an old woman of the mind in the body of a child, a girl with uncounted reverend mothers strung out in her awareness like the pearls of a glowing necklace, her flesh being the one part of her that yet remains pure, at least in Messiah. We are told Alia represents ultimate tension. She is described in paradoxical terms: vulgar despite being a priestess, knowledgeable to a depth that terrifies despite being so young. She is cruel when she is most kind, unthinking when she thinks, and when she seeks to build, she is as destructive as a Coriolis storm. These descriptions demonstrate that there is a disconnect within Alia's character, a contradiction between what was intended and how she came out. She wants to be loved, but as a preborn, she causes fear. She wants to preserve Paul's empire, but in doing so she ends up destroying it. As a Fremen, she wants to walk freely through the desert, but as an Atreides she is forced into a temple and forced into rulership. And since she isn't capable of ruling with love as an Atreides, she rules the only way she knows how: with fear. Interestingly, Alia is called the womb of heaven despite never giving birth to the god emperor. The womb is symbolically associated with water. If Alia were born on Caladan, she would be the womb of heaven, a water figure from the outer world. But as she is born on Arrakis, she is considered by the Fremen to be an earth figure, symbolic of the desert, a Coriolis storm, and a death spirit who walks without feet, barren of personal identity and barren of children. These two titles are another contradiction: heaven water against earth desert. Perhaps the two unite within Alia to represent the water of life, which is not water at all but a concentration of spice made of death, the death of a sandworm. After all, Alia was killed in the womb before she was even born. In one of her reports, Princess Irulan describes Alia as the virgin-harlot. This piqued my interest, perhaps due to the influence of the Madonna whore typology most prominently depicted in the biblical revelation, where women are either Madonnas, the virginal brides of God, or whores, the mystery Babylon the Great, mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. I wondered, how could one person be both virgin and harlot? And what does this mean for Alia? In the most simplest of forms, virgin harlot represents the mind-body disconnect. The virgin represents Alia's inexperienced body, and the harlot represents the reverend mothers of her mind. This is the interpretation most explicit in the text. Basically, through her genetic memories, Alia's mind has experienced all that life has to offer, but she only understands this on an intellectual level. This means that she doesn't connect with her emotions or her desires. When her body undergoes puberty, she understands this as information. It is her flesh desiring a mate. It is a feeling to be suppressed, redirected, and avoided. To explore a more symbolic interpretation of virgin harlot, I think it's important to first understand who Alia was intended to be had the Bene Gesserit plan gone accordingly. The Alia we know is a perversion of the Atreides daughter who Lady Jessica was intended to birth. She was meant to be raised as Paul was. Her first 15 years would be spent living peacefully on Caladan. She would have her father's love and her mother's Bene Gesserit training. She would then be married to Feyd and bridge peace between their houses. Love would be her weapon, and birthing the Kwisatz Haderach would be her jihad. Her son would marry the Emperor's daughter and forge a god dynasty. This Alia is a genetically recreated Virgin Mary giving birth to our Christ and Saviour. I say genetically recreated because we know the Kwisatz Haderach is not our Saviour. We know Immaculate Conception is a blight on the Duneverse due to the collective fear of artificial insemination. And we know the Bene Gesserit aren't a benevolent sisterhood, but a group who wields religious mystique as a political tool. At the very least, Alia would be the closest a human could get to becoming the Mother of God. She probably would not have been happy, but maybe at some point in her life she would have been loved. Unfortunately for Alia, the breeding plan was co-opted and corrupted. The Alia we know was born in a world where she had to be sacrificed so that Paul could be the Messiah. And so the Virgin Mary was born an abomination, distorted by the ecology of this barren wasteland world of Arrakis. Lady Jessica steals from her the role of Mother of God, which means in the womb Alia was forcibly raised to godhood. A corrupted Virgin Mary to marry the corrupted Christ in an incestuous union that would perhaps have them reign as the tyrants needed for the Golden Path, a mentat and an anti-mentat, a god god and a goddess. Of course, this last part never occurs. It is too repulsive for Paul to even consider. In Messiah, Alia remains a virgin even as she becomes the mother figure of Paul's children, and what is left for the tension between the virgin and the harlot but to fall to corruption? Alia has been in a constant war with the most terrifying of her ancestors since the moment of her birth, winning for a time a Pyrrhic victory which inflicted such a devastating toll that it was tantamount to defeat. She was corrupted in the womb and can never revert to being pure. The virgin will lose to the harlot. There was only ever one ending for Alia. Alia's title demonstrates her duality as virgin-harlot, Saint Alia of the Knife, a saint but one of violence. This violence is a manifestation of the violation she underwent in the womb, the non-consensual penetration of infinite awareness into her unformed mind, experiences forced upon her innocence, an assault by manifold egos, harlot, abomination. She was never a little girl, she only ever pretended to be. If the virgin represents the intended Atreides daughter, then the harlot represents Alia as an abomination. She is not an individual, but a vessel to be used by the egos of untold ancestors. Due to being preborn, Alia is an object of fearful veneration. She is a gentle violence. Her innocence masks deception. She is lost in tension with chastity. When Alia trains naked to exhaust the desires of her flesh, the climactic violence of blade against blade gives her a sense of supreme exaltation, after which she feels a sweaty post-coitum kind of sadness. This is violence as a substitute for desire. Violence as a substitute for love. Her violence was born of hearkening cruelty, but it is also a hearkening quality for whom pleasure and violence are one and the same. And what is more ridiculous, Paul thinks, than a death commando transformed into a priest? Ultimately, whether Alia was symbolically the virgin or the harlot didn't matter. Alia's tragic end was caused by nothing more than being abandoned. The pressures of being left in charge of Paul's entire empire caused her to consult her inner lives, demanding their advice and plunging into spice trance in search of guiding vision. Alia succeeded just long enough to raise Paul's children in a secure political environment before the Atreides daughter lost her battle. After being abandoned by everyone who could possibly have loved her, Alia was forced to save herself.